Is this thing on? This is actually round two. I couldn't get Janson on before. So this is going to be about the Attica Mural downtown, the fresh one, and it is super sweet. And there it is. I've got Janson, and I'm going to bring him on. He is the creator of this incredible mural, and I have a million questions for him, and I cannot wait to hear what he has to say. This will be my first time really talking to him. I talked to him for like 10 minutes before earlier today, just to tell him kind of what we were gonna, what I had in mind on this whole thing. And he seemed really cool, so I'm excited to hear from him. All right, let's try this out. Oh, it looks like it's gonna go. It's gonna go. There it is.
There it is. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, man?
Good, good. I'm glad we got that one sorted out. I think it's the phone. The phone's gonna do it.
Is it? All right, good, good. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited. I've had a ton of people ask me about the mural downtown. It looks great, and man, I was
Awesome.
like, I
Thank
don't
you.
know. Yeah, of course. I was like, I don't know the guy that did it, but I was like, I will find him. And I will find him, and I will bring him on my podcast, and we will talk about this thing.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a blast to work on. I was there for about, I think I was counting it out. It was about like 10 days, somewhere around 10 days. So it
Yeah.
was like getting that hospitality out there and just spending the time. I would just like get up in the morning, get started on the wall, work from like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., call it
Yeah.
quits, take a break maybe halfway through the day. But yeah, so I wrapped up a few days ago. Now I'm back home with my fiance and our dog who's just chilling on the couch right now.
Yes. Yeah. So I had people ask me like what's involved? Like do you surely you don't just go up there and wing it, you know? And I'm like, nah, I highly
No,
doubt that. Like I bet there's so
it's
much
more
planning
planned
in
than
this.
people realize. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my fiance and I had a project in Texas one time where we went out and painted in Houston. And that was the idea. We didn't realize that they thought when we showed up we were just going to kind of wing it, just throw paint on the wall and get started that way. But it's definitely a lot more involved. So this one, for example, I had already been painting in Lafayette. So
Yep.
I was working with Tippecanoe Arts Federation, or Tisha Lee of Tippecanoe Arts Federation, and I was working on another mural, and she mentioned that there might be the availability of doing another wall. We got talking about it. It sounded awesome. Um, and she kind of had let them know like, hey, I have this artist that you guys might want to work with. And then so they give me a list. They'll give me kind of a list of names and words, and I could read them off. It's really cool. It's a lot of the descriptors of Attica
Oh,
from local
really?
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's something that the committee had pulled together, and so yeah, they gave me that to run with, and I have a couple days to do the drawing, and I work digitally on my computer, so I'll take photographs and kind of cut those photographs up and piece them together and collage them,
Oh,
and
wow.
then yeah, and then draw on top of it and kind of work into it that way. So I work entirely, on the computer. And then when it comes to getting on site, we secure the space, we figure out what, housing is going to look like, timeline's going to look like, what weather is going to look like.
Uh-huh.
We bring in, aerial equipment. So I was working on a lift the whole time, or a cherry picker
I
the
s-
whole time.
I seen that. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah. So there's definitely a lot that goes into it. And then that's all before even getting on site and painting. So when it's actually on site, we have a projection night. So I take the image that I've made, on
Oh,
my
really?
computer. Yeah, and then I strip that image completely so there's no color and it's all just outlines. And so then I'll project those outlines at nighttime onto the wall and then get up there, spray paint, sketch the whole thing out. And then that way the next day that I show up, it's just color by number at that point. So it's like you
Yeah.
sketch the whole piece out. That's the hardest part of the process, and then the rest of it, more or less is smooth sailing. You still have like weather issues and things like that, but
Sure.
you're just up there in a basket all day. Paint's all surrounding you. You got your umbrella with the sun protection, and
Yeah, so I
um,
don't know, you probably don't know this, but uh, I just got back from California, and before I left, it was like the day before I left. Yeah,
yeah,
I stopped there at Pete's King. I always eat there, and I grabbed some food and stuff.
Yeah,
And I was watching you
it's
paint.
good.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. But I was, yeah, those guys, like, when I call in, shout out to Pete's King, because I call those guys and I just say it's Brandon, and they know I get the same thing every
Yeah,
time. I don't have to say
yeah.
anything else. So just like, oh yeah, 15 minutes. All right.
No, it was a dangerous place to work on because I was like, you know, there's these two huge vents that are on the wall. And so I'm up in the
Yeah.
basket and I'd be like halfway through my day. And I usually try to skip lunch just because I'll have a big breakfast, skip lunch, and then wait until dinner. And but I'd be up on the wall and you could just smell the pizza just the whole time, like the whole time.
This sucks.
It was
Yeah.
awesome. It was awesome until like the last day, and I was like, yeah, I've had a lot of pizza now. I've got to be
Yeah.
careful.
So, well, when I was watching it, I thought it was the coolest thing I've the most ingenious thing I've ever seen out of another human being. I was like, man, what the hell is he doing up there? And I saw you, like, kind of, I was watching you fiddle around with something.
I
And
know
I
what
wasn't
you're
sure.
about to get on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I seen there was like a, an extension cord run up there. I thought, oh, it's kind of odd.
Yeah.
I'm watching, and my buddy who's sitting
Yeah.
there beside me, he's like, what the hell's he got in his hand? I was like, hell, I
Is that
think
a
that's a
reciprocating
sawzall.
saw?
Like, I think that's
Yeah.
a sawzall. And I see, like, the little
That is
device on the end
precisely
just,
what that is. Yeah.
it's like, that is the
Yeah.
coolest thing.
Well, you know, I mean, you got to think about it. So every color that's on that wall is a different can of spray paint.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's multiple cans of one color. So you might get one shape done, you know, paint a whole shape, and it takes 4 cans.
Uh-huh.
So if you do it by hand, if you sit there and shake a can by hand, it takes, you know, to get it done properly, because it really needs to be like actually shaken very, very well. And
Yeah.
because it'll sludge up at the bottom. The bottom of the
Uh-huh.
can, all the pigment kind of settles. And so you really have to shake it. And like you lose hours out of your day just sitting there shaking cans.
I don't
And
doubt that.
I had a project last year. It was last October, and it was cold, and I knew that the cans were going to be really, really, really hard to shake. And my
Yeah.
shoulder's been giving me trouble, so I was like, I have to find a solution for this. So I'm looking on Amazon, going through all these, like, you know, they have these can shakers and these things like that. And then I heard this one about having a reciprocating saw, and then on the end of the reciprocating saw, it's just a little holder for one spray paint can. And
Yeah.
so like you just sit there and you aim it up, you know, bzz, get it running, shakes
Yeah.
that way, shake it upside down, shake it on the side a little bit, you're good to go.
Yeah. I seen that and I was like, this dude
But
knows what he's
definitely
doing.
saves
Clearly,
time.
yeah. When I seen that, I was like, this dude knows what he's doing. This ain't his first rodeo. If he's up there, yeah, he's got
Yeah.
it figured out. Yeah, it was really cool.
I'm gonna
And it looked to
save
me
this
like,
rotator cuff. Make sure it doesn't.
yeah. So it looked to me too like it wasn't just regular spray paint, right? It wasn't like Rust-Oleum
No,
shit
it's
that you
like
buy at the store.
super. No, you know, I've used that before and it works, but it fades over time. You know, it fades a lot quicker than other paints. And so right now what I'm using is a stuff called Montana, and they
Uh-huh.
have a couple different lines of their paint, but I use Montana 94, which is like super, super archival, like lasts for a super long time, and it's enamel. So, you know, it
Oh,
holds up to the weather and the elements and everything. So when you spray it on there, you know, it's also protecting the wall. So there's, you know, some definite benefits to using it. But, you know, I've been doing this I've been spray painting for about 10 years, and I've learned which paints to avoid, you know, things to be really mindful of. There are certain companies where the paint will fade in about a year. And, you know, when you're making work for someone's property, for their business, and, you know, for a small town too, where it makes a big impact, you want to make sure it's not going to fade out right away, and you want it to look good year after year. So yeah, you use good stuff.
yeah, that's a good insight. I never thought about that either, about it like fading or anything like that. But yeah, it
Yeah.
totally makes sense, especially right there where the sun would beat
Yeah.
down on it all the time.
Yup,
Yeah, so
exactly.
yeah. So like now you said that like you do the deal where you shine it onto the building, and then you basically
Hmm.
just run the outline around there. So before you shine that,
Yeah.
is it all digitally drawn? Like you draw it up on an iPad and then just have like a digital thing?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm using a Microsoft Surface Pro, which is it's
Yeah.
old. I got it in 2015 and it is still kicking.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But but yeah, I use Adobe Illustrator, and what I do is basically, you know, and I'll kind of trace like like value structure. So I'm looking at like shadows and highlights and making sure that I get all the important information into the piece. But when it's left, when I draw everything out, it looks like a mess of just black lines. So when I
Oh yeah.
send that projection up there and when I just project onto the wall, you can't really see what the piece is, but it's like looking at, you know, when you open a coloring book, you can't exactly see what's going to happen until you actually start laying that color down.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah, like a coloring book. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense though. I get that. Um,
yeah,
another, so I've been watching some of like your drone videos and stuff. You know, I'm fascinated with that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah.
How were the, and I read some of the posts. How were the people? Because that seemed like that was like something that was kind of left an impression on you about the people of the town. I thought
Oh,
that was kind of
I,
neat.
yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I've worked in a lot of places, and you know, every town has its individual characteristics. But the one
Hmm.
thing that I found about Attica that was really unique was, you know, like I'd be up in the lift and I'd look down and see someone walking over to my paint and dropping water off, right? Or
Oh,
like
really?
in the morning, I get a notification on Instagram that someone made breakfast and the breakfast is already sitting on my lift. So like when I wake up, walk out of the Airbnb, my lift is like, you know, 100 feet away, and I go and I see breakfast is like sitting there waiting for me. And so like
Really?
people had a really, really, yeah, it was a really good experience in that way. I mean, the generosity was one thing, but even the attention. So, you know, I'd be painting up there all day. And in the afternoon, you know, people are getting off work, people are kind of wrapping up with their day. And happy hour was, you know, primarily like you'd see people coming up with golf carts and they would just sit and watch, you know, and
Really?
watch paint and out in areas for the most part. And so when I'm painting, I don't always have people that will just sit and watch for like a half an hour to 45 minutes. It's more so, and they're used to seeing it. But
Right.
to be working in a smaller town where like it makes such a large impact. I mean, it's cool to people have a real, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gotta feel special too. Um, is it like nerve-wracking at all when you have
Yeah.
like people watching you and you're up there and just like, oh,
You know, it's funny because I'm not like the most social person in the world, but like that is something I don't have an issue with.
really? Yeah.
Like, you know, Tisha, who helped get me on this project, she like I've talked to her and I've been like, speaking is not my thing. I do not like public speaking. It makes me nervous. Like standing in front of a bunch of people and trying to find the words to say something, like I will freeze up, you know. And but there's something unique about like where I'm just painting my own thing. I'm focused on my job. That's all I'm there to do. Um, it's just like, you know, painting the side of a building. It just
Uh-huh,
is
yeah.
like, it's pretty straightforward once you're up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good at it. So like, you know, you shouldn't, yeah, you're just like, I got this. You know what I mean?
What was
The
that?
I said, and clearly you're good at it. So it's not like, you know, like you shouldn't even feel no type of way up there. Just like,
Oh,
no, I got it. I'm good.
thank you. I just, you know, I love doing it. I love painting, and it's something that it took a long time for me to get to the point where I can do it as a career. And, you
I'm
know, so there are
sure.
hard days. There are days when, you know, you're trying to anticipate things up for your next job and there's stress involved. Um,
I
but
bet that.
there are times when I have to remind myself and be like, okay, I might be sweating, it might be super hot, I might be tired, and I'm nervous about my next job, but this is a lot better than my experience was like packing boxes, for example, or like working retail, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's high responsibility levels. Like, you know, if you make mistakes, it can cost time, and it can, you know, you're working with other people and what, you know, the expectations of other people.
Hmm.
But it's still like I still get to do what I want for my job. And so
Yeah,
there's like,
right.
you know, that's the one thing that's like I think I get up there and it doesn't bother me that much anymore, where it's like, okay, now I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so important, man. I tell people that all the time because like,
Yeah,
you know, growing up in a small town, there's not a whole lot of that. You just don't see people doing what they want. They work you know, a 9 to 5 or whatever that, you
Hmm.
know, they can feel comfortable doing. And hey, good, like
Hmm.
good for them. That's fine.
Yeah.
But man,
Exactly. Exactly.
but it's just there is something special about being able to do when you find out when you find something that you like and then you can figure out how to turn that into a
Yeah.
profession. It's the greatest. It
Yeah.
is absolutely the greatest.
Well, and I think too, you know, with like social media and the like, I guess the accessibility of all this information is like we're sitting here talking about this, and I know that, you know, people are around our age are doing the exact same thing, and it might be in metropolitan areas, but even rural areas now, I think,
Yeah.
you know, like everybody is seeing the information, it's all there, and it shows people like I can do this here too. And so, you know, there's a possibility that I might be able to come back. And I was excited about like bringing on like other local artists to work with and stuff like that, because it is something where it's like it's not just me painting here. The it's opening up this door to be like, oh, like so and so down the road can do that too. Like we can do that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really cool way to look at it. It really is. And it's you know, I don't see as much of that mindset as I wish I could. You know, does that make
Yeah.
sense? I just
Yeah.
and like I want to be able to give back, you know, to the community, in my community or your community or younger generation or whatever,
Hmm.
to show people that if you do have a dream and you're good at it and you can figure out if you can figure it out, you could do it. It doesn't matter where you're from, you'll
Yeah.
figure it out with the internet. You can do whatever you want to do anymore. And it's really
Yeah.
cool to see somebody else
People
live out that same thing.
consistently, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like, you know, working alongside my artist friends that are doing similar things, it's like I this can feel like a lonely road where you're doing things on your own terms and you're deciding like, okay, this is how I'm going to do this, and it's different than what I'm used to seeing. But then you meet other people that are doing it and you're like, "Oh, wow, no, this is the stress is normal, the responsibility is normal, like you're realizing like, oh, this is okay, you can continue to do this." It's definitely
Yeah,
like a reaffirmation.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but it definitely is one of those things where I think, you know, people do underestimate themselves. And if you have an interest in something, like anything, whatever that interest is in, like whether it's a hobby or just like a side thing, you know, there's a reason why you're interested in that. And there's a reason why it makes you happy doing it. You know, so for me, I was like, well, I'm miserable at all these other jobs. I need to like find a way to make this work in a sustainable way to where you can bring income in and you can continue doing this and line them up back to back, you know?
Yeah. And I think that there's a certain amount of like tenacity behind that where you know you don't give yourself an out. There is no other choice. It's this
Hmm.
way or no way. You know, like very similar as to what you said, like the same thing. Like I suck at all these other jobs and the ones that I don't suck at, I don't really care to do much. You know, like I'm tired of doing this shit. I don't want to do it no more.
Yeah,
Like yeah,
yeah,
and so you just give
yeah,
yourself that oomph of like, no, you're gonna do this and this is it.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, I remember a few years ago I was, oh, go ahead.
oh, well, I was just gonna say I've also been curious too, and I just didn't want to forget about it. But like, what was probably the hardest part for the whole thing? Because when I seen you up there, I was thinking about you, and I was like, man, it's got to be hot. Like, I'm sure that sucks, but I bet that there's like way more behind the scenes stuff than you know than I know about, like that makes it hard.
There, I mean, a lot, like a lot of it's
Yeah,
really difficult. The painting is the easiest part. Like the painting
for
is
sure. I
honestly
figured that.
typically the easiest part and it's the most fun. The heat is not that bad. Like I was really lucky for whatever reason, even though the sun was coming right at me, the wind was pretty decent. So, you
Oh,
know, I was underneath the umbrella, so I was all right. But you know, I think projection night is really difficult. It's a different time of the day for me. Like I like to get up early. I like to get things done fairly early. And I like to go to bed early. And so um, projection night is a little bit difficult because it just throws everything upside down. So I have to make sure everything's ready for nightfall. And then the second that it's dark, you get into gear and you start working on it. So you have to set up your make sure you have access to power make sure that that power stretches far enough to get to the wall, make sure that there's no lights interfering. And this wall was really unique because it had a secondary, so there's like a transformer for power. And so there's a transformer about 100 feet away. And then there's a secondary
Okay,
piece that
I
it
know where
goes
that's
to
at.
that connects to the wall. So basically, like right in the middle of the wall, there's this huge power line. And so you have to be careful around that. But at nighttime, it can be really difficult. Like depth perception at nighttime
Oh,
is a little funky.
because of
So we
the
actually
shadow?
like, yep, exactly. And you know, imagine like if you look out into the distance right now and you see like a fishing line. You know, a fishing line, you can't see exactly how far it is. It messes with your depth perception. And so it was kind
Yeah.
of like that being next to those lines. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like the actual process of painting is like the easiest. Like when I'm on site, when I'm working with the equipment. Um, but you know, tracking things down like funding is really difficult. Making sure that you have a place to stay while you're there and making sure that food's covered, you know, and Attica was a really interesting experience where, you know, everything was just set for me. And so I had a place to stay that was like right next door. You know, food was covered by all the locals who were just being incredible.
That's
So
awesome.
they're like, those were the two things. It's like, that's number one. And like access to a restroom too is like
Oh, yeah.
critical when you're working there all day and you just, I mean, you're in the sun, so you have to drink water constantly.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. You know, it's little things, but they all pile up. And, you know, a little thing can be like a 15-minute, you know, wait time. So you might lose time while you're doing it. And so you're trying to be like, okay, so I have 6 days of painting or 7 days of painting or however long it is, you
Hmm.
know, making sure that things can get done in that time frame. So like I'll show up, you know, I'll wake up in the morning, grab my coffee, walk down the stairs, go look at a piece in the morning and be like, okay, I need to get that done, that done, that done today to be on track to finish.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. It's like nothing is so major that it's really difficult. But I think when you kind of piece everything together, it's stressful.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. And I get exactly what you're saying too, where you got to just cover all your bases on the little stuff. I'm sure that does add up.
Yeah.
The one thing that's kind of tied into that, so like I would assume it's yours, but maybe not. So who provides the lift? Because that lift that you had was badass.
Wasn't that cool?
Yeah, it
So
was.
that is, we have a couple of friends in Lafayette, and they're friends with Tisha. And it's Josh Bible and Stephanie Bible, and they have, I think it's like through a friend, he owns the lift. And so we rent the lift from him. He's really cool about it, but we rent the lift from him. And I've used it for my last two projects now. And it's so funny because it's like, it's got these like big eyes. And it's almost like the lift has like, it looks almost like plants or like fur or something like that. So when you actually see it in photos, it looks like a dragon. It looks
Yeah,
like a
I know.
dragon with a big overarching basket.
Yeah, so when we got there and we were watching you, he's like, I wonder where he got the lift. I was like, well, surely it's his. Who in the hell it's got a lift that just comes out one day? It's like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna paint this thing up like a dragon.
they're not, yeah, they're not cheap lifts.
Right.
But they definitely, it makes a big difference having them. A
Oh,
lot
I'm
of people
sure.
don't think
Yeah.
about that too, because you'll have, you know, let's say you've got this wall, and if you were to use a ladder, you and you're painting the whole wall. Like it's one thing if you're like using a ladder to work on a window, you're working on an isolated area, so you've walked up that ladder, you hang out there while you're working on your piece or on your window or whatever the repair is. But if you have to go up and down that ladder across the wall like 1,000 times, by the time you're done, it's just like
Oh,
pure
yeah.
exhaustion.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
So the lift makes life a lot easier. You just kind of like you kind of do like a Xerox print of the wall. You get up, start from the top, and just kind of like go back and forth until it's done.
Oh, really? Yeah, I didn't think about that. Like if
Yeah,
there was any type of, yeah, way that you would win across the whole thing.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's a fun process.
yeah, I'm sure that so like when I was watching you on the lift too, that's when I knew that you were definitely a seasoned vet in this because I saw you working the lift, and like I've been on the lifts before, you know, and especially as you get them higher, you know, the wind moves, and like they really like they can get to
Yeah.
moving around pretty good. And I
Oh
seen
yeah.
you, dude. Yeah, there was nothing. You were just right up to it, come clear over to the wall. I'm like, oh, he's hitting the wall. This old boy's hitting the wall. Nope, stopped it.
Oh
Like, I
yeah.
mean, perfectly. I was like, okay,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
he's
I've
got
gotten
it.
it down to like an inch. Yeah, I mean, it helps too, like you know, because it's joysticks. It's basically video games up there, and
Yeah.
you know, that particular lift is it's old, and so like if you move that joystick just too far, it's sending you. You're going quick. But if you finesse it, and it's literally like you have to like slowly push it over and wait until you feel the arm engage, and you're like, all right, we're rocking, and then it'll take you over. But like there's if you go too far over, you're going way too fast.
Yeah, I was cracking up when I saw you. I was like, he's going for it, man. This guy's going to the moon. All right.
Oh.
Like, what the hell is he doing? Is he gonna paint the roof?
Well, I mean, the other thing too is like you're up there, you know, you go to the top at least like 4 times in one day, you know, because you're like, okay, got to go up to work on a section, come down for water or come down for a break or something, go back up. And so you're up and down a decent amount. The up and down is the easy stuff. It's like when you need to like come away from the wall, so you swing out, and then as
Yeah.
you're swinging back to the wall, that's where it's like I've hit a wall before. It's not fun.
I wish I could have seen that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit brick hard enough and it just like starts to crumble away.
Oh, oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said that you might be coming back then. Do you have something like are there other murals that you're going to be doing in this area?
Yeah. Well, hopefully. So I'm working with Lexi again, and someone named Barb. And so they have a meeting, I believe, with the Parks Board, local Parks Board. And so they had been talking about this basketball court that they've been wanting to get repainted for years. And it's kind of finally time to get it repainted. And they were thinking, well, why don't, you know, we have this artist here. Why don't we try to pair something where you come back, just paint like design on the bottom, and then they'll come back and do the professional lines on top of it. So it'd be like
Oh,
white
that would be
lines on top of
sick.
like a beautiful piece of artwork for a basketball court. So I'm crossing my fingers that things go well. You know, planning is always, it can be difficult. But everybody's been so amazing, you know, through Attica. And, you know, we really wanted to make sure too that, you know, if I come back, it wouldn't just be me painting. Cause I thought, you know, I understand like when I've lived in communities, so I lived in Milwaukee and I would see a mural artist come out and paint, and then they would paint again, and you're like, oh man, I really would like to get an opportunity to paint. I wonder how I can do that. And that opportunity wasn't there, you know, like where I could like reach out to someone in the same way and kind of find a way to work together. So the idea with this one would be to bring on a local artist to do their thing on another wall, and I could help and assist and get them kind of rolling on that, and walk them through the process, sort of introduce this way of working to locals. So that was a big part of what we wanted to do as well. So I'm crossing my fingers that it goes well, but it would probably be sometime this summer.
Really? Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
awesome. Have you ever painted on the ground or is it always on buildings?
I painted the ground before. Last year I was painting in Lafayette, and if anyone's familiar, there's Sacred Grounds Coffee Shop, and right in front of their coffee shop, they have basically like a four-way intersection, and so we
I
painted
know
the
exactly where you're at.
crosswalks on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we did that, and if you use the right paint, you know, it lasts a long time. And the thing that's nice too about doing this is that it's not getting actual like driving traffic. So the artwork wouldn't get beat down as much, so it lasts a little bit longer, or quite a bit longer. But yeah, so that's definitely one that we're trying to get rolling. But it's like, you know, I would also advocate like while we're talking about this, I'm hoping we can connect with a couple more people about, you know, if anyone wants to jump in and work with us on this, or if anyone wants to like learn the artistic process and how to get rolling on that, that's what we're trying to do. And I was hoping to do some teaching kind of while I'm there in that capacity.
Oh yeah,
So
that'd be really cool. In fact, if everyone that's watching this, if you can share the video, and that way more people will see it. especially locals too, because if you're
Yeah.
wanting to get people involved locally, that'd be really cool. But it seems like that
Yeah.
would be a
And I'm
kind of a
thinking
difficult
like,
thing.
yeah, it could be a bit complicated, but yeah, if anyone wants to share, reach out to me on Instagram or on Facebook. Or, you can always reach out to Lexi Haddock as well. She's going to be working with me on this. And
Yeah, she's in here right now.
awesome. Oh, hey, Lexi. Lexi is awesome.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely crushed it. I mean, so Lexi was organizing like the food stuff every day for me. And so I would walk down those stairs at my Airbnb, and at the bottom of the stairs, there was always a little, like, it was like a Ziploc bag to keep it from getting rained on if it rained. But it was like a card for the day explaining like, oh, like, hey, thanks for doing this today. This is good. This one's for lunch. This one's for dinner. And it was just like, it was every single day.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah,
I
she just
definitely like
commented.
when I,
She said, "Hi, come
oh,
back soon."
nice. Yes. That's what I'm hoping for it. But yeah.
Yeah, man.
And
So
and
it
so I'm
sounds like.
curious too because,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Nope, you're good.
I lost train of thought, so no worries.
Oh, well, no, I was gonna say though, I did talk to a lot of people that, had been around and watched you paint, and it was really cool to hear that so many people were like, they would come out there and watch you, and I know some people that had stopped and like had talked to you and a few things like it's a small
Yeah,
town, so everybody knows everybody, and yeah, I talked to the painter. And it's
yeah,
really cool to see a community come together and welcome somebody that they don't know, and I think that's really cool, and I always love seeing that, and I especially love to see the other side of it, your side, where you're like, yeah, man, this
yeah,
isn't something that typically happens when I go other places, or maybe just not all the time.
yeah. I mean, not at all. Like when I've worked in Lafayette, there's a little bit of that. Like I think that there are, Lafayette has also been like a really incredible place to paint. And I'm sort of getting this vibe that Indiana in general is just like very like, kind people, that there seems to be a large amount of collaboration, or there seems to be a large amount of people like wanting to congregate. And so that's been something that like was unique to Attica, just in like sheer amount of like how cool people were and how often they were cool. But like, I noticed that a little bit in Lafayette and Wolcott. But it's definitely like, it's just not always the case, and when you're working for a community, it's important to make sure that the artwork is right for the community, that it's doing what you want it to do. And it's a responsibility to be like, I'm in your community. I'm working for you guys. And so when people respond well to that, like, that it makes or breaks a project. I've worked on projects, like I worked on one in Philly, and I'm up on the lift. I'm working on the project, right again, when like hanging out of their windows screaming at me because they can't stand the lift beeping. So it's not, not everybody is always super cool with what we do. And it's like construction in a lot of ways. So I think that people get jostled by it. But to have almost the whole community kind of like warmly welcome me in it was really cool and unique too.
Yeah, man, that's awesome to hear. It really is. It makes me happy, and it makes me proud of, the people of this town, to be so
Yeah,
supportive of something so cool.
people can be very cool. It's like, I think it's stuff like this that like brings people out of the woodwork to be like, oh, cool, like we agree a lot more than we don't agree on things. It's like,
Yeah,
most people want to see beauty, most people want to see revitalization, most people want to see, activity and stuff. So it's like, that's one of the perks of my job, is like I can help bring that, and I can help bring the joy and the happiness and the creativity, and get like kids involved too. I had like kids playing with like chalk down there, and it was incredible. And Lexi's a great example. She brought her kids through, and So like this whole section of the sidewalk was like covered in chalk, but you can tell that the younger generation is looking and they're like, oh, I can do that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And kind of another thing I wanted to ask you too about the like the creative side of it. So like when they get a hold of you and they're like, okay, we want you to paint this thing on, on the wall. Is it just like, how does that work? Is it like just come out whatever you want to put up, or like do you have to send like proofs and stuff? Like, do you guys like this? You don't
Oh, you
like that?
definitely have to send proofs. Yeah, because I mean, they're contracting you for a job. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I know, like, for example, like if you're working with like a plumber or you're working with like a contractor for your home, you want to know what they're going to do before they get working on it. And, you know, because things like certain, like there will be like color issues sometimes where like a community is like, oh, I don't know that I want this color on here. It doesn't represent our area. And so it's stuff like that. But this project it seemed to hit pretty quickly. Like I developed 4 mock-ups. So I had 4 sketches ready to go. There were pieces kind of like intermingled into each other. So there were like variations more so.
Mm-hmm.
So we went through, we were, you know, we had an online meeting or a Zoom meeting where we just kind of went over the sketches, and they had kind of talked to me about what they did and what they didn't like, and, you know, revisions I could make. And so we ended up selecting one of them with a slight revision. I can't, honestly, in retrospect, I can't even remember what the revision was. But for me, that's like kind of the cool part of what we do, is that you know, I'm not just making like my own artwork for my own interests. I'm able to like listen to what someone wants, and then they can say, well, I like this, or I don't like this, or I like something about this. Can you do it in this way? So then it becomes this like back and forth, or this collaboration with the town that I'm working in. Not all projects are like that. Like I'm working on one next week where I'm just gonna literally just go paint what I want. But it's a different structure to the job. Like the pay structure is different, the committee structure is different, the timeline's different, the budget's different. So it's stuff like that where each one is like entirely different job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. And like I guess I'd kind of figured that, but and like thinking about it now, as you know, when you had mentioned like, it's, your artwork and you get to put it on kind of for the people, it's got to feel really, really cool too. Whenever you like, I mean, maybe not so much Attica because it's a little ways away from you, but if you drive through an area and you're like, I painted that, like that's got to be the coolest.
It's it's pretty cool. I think like when the thing that I love is being like, so now I'm back home in Illinois. And I'm on Instagram all the time. So like I'll be perusing Instagram and then I'll see like someone caught a photo of it. Like I love that.
Oh
You know, to
yeah.
me that shows like not only did someone walk by it, like they actually, it caught their attention. That's number one. Then it got them to take the photo and then post that, not just save the photo, but then post that to their social media because they want to show other people. So like it's these like all these different steps. I'm like, I get to be reminded that like, oh,
Yeah.
this project happened, like you got to do this, you know. um
Yeah.
I wish that I painted more. Like I don't, so I paint a decent amount in Chicago, but like I live outside of Chicago, and I sometimes think it, driving through my own community and seeing a bunch of my murals, but it just, you know, I've been going where they're available, and so like, you know, I haven't had a lot of like super local stuff here, but yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. And so you mentioned that you had painted in like Philly and a few other places. Where all have you been, just all
Mm,
over painting?
yeah. So for work, I've painted Philadelphia, I've painted Milwaukee, I've painted Houston, Texas, painted Baltimore, um, painted Iowa. And when I was in college, I had traveled to go to South Korea and did a project there. It wasn't a paid thing, but it was like a gallery kind of
Hmm.
representation thing, where I went out with some students and was able to basically create this like massive mural, um, through a gallery with one of the artists that was working, you know, living and working in South Korea. But yeah, that's the goal, is to sort of like bounce around and, you know, meet a lot of communities and meet a lot of people. And, you know, I have like my own interests too. Like I'm a big car person. I absolutely love cars.
Same.
Nice. They
Yeah.
are very, very cool.
Yeah.
But you know, one of the things that I love about, you know, doing these projects is being like, okay, I'm going to drive. So I'm going to, you know, make a road trip out of it. So I pack up my car, get everything how I want it to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've got
Holla.
my like traveling workspace with me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm
We
doing
get
like
along
third
real
gear
well.
pulls all the way there. Sweet. We'll have to
Yeah.
take a trip to the Badlands.
Yeah. Yeah, you should, man. In fact, like I just got back from California, so I flew to California and then drove across the country back. And it was really cool. And
Did you pick
I've
up
got
a
like a
car?
yeah, well, so I was with my girlfriend and her aunt's like moving back she's moving to Indiana from California.
Okay.
Dude, I drove a Hummer and an H2 Hummer and a trailer clear back here from Long Beach.
Oh, driving a trailer for that long is a lot of mental work.
It is. It is. It sucked.
Oh, that's
Going
awesome
through
though.
drive-throughs and getting
Yeah.
gas. It's just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
what did you
I'm
think
not a
about?
fan of like the trailer situation.
So, what did you think about like all the razors and stuff? Because that had to have been pretty cool for you then.
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, so, you know, off that list I was telling you about, there was like a whole series of words, and I remember like, you know, it was things about like the of Attica, but then there were like a list of other things that they had, like very specific, like, you know, shops, like local places, and Badlands was on there. And the second I found out what Badlands was, I was like, there's gonna have to be a car in this piece. And if it's not a car, it's gonna have to be like some off-roading car. I'm gonna have to make it work. So I made that, you know, that off-roading buggy. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's in that piece. And what I'd be like up there painting it, you know, I'm working on painting the wheel, right? And
Yeah.
then like underneath my lift, someone on a like muddied up razor drives underneath the lift and parks, you know, which is, it's funny when people will park like right underneath your basket. I'm like, I have like paint coming like flying down. But but it was funny because I would have that like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. People are like done going out and doing their adventures for the day. They're grabbing pizza and they're on their way home, coming up with a like super, super dirty car. And I'm like, that's the way to do it.
Yep. Yes, it is. I'll show you something real quick.
Yeah.
Check this out.
There was one guy that works at the pizza joint and or at pizza or I'm like having a brain thing that it's not working. But at the pizza shop there's this guy that works there, and he shows up in a pickup truck, and it's just got like the cabin. So it's like the hood and like, you know, a housed cabin, but the bed's completely gone. The fenders are completely gone. And his rear brakes, he has, I don't know if I have the tool up here with me, but it's like a vice grips pushed onto his brake line, holding it so that his back brakes don't work, so that he only has
Uh-huh.
front brakes, and then he has that zip tied to the truck. So it's like this permanent modification. And I was like, I took so many photos of that. I was sending it to my brother and my dad who live in rural Massachusetts, and you know, they're big truck guys. So I sent that to them, and I was like, if I'm gonna drive a truck, it's gonna look like this.
It's gonna be this truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, check this out. This is how cool Attica is. This is well, I guess I have two daily drivers, but that's like my daily commuter, like in town. The
Oh,
Razor,
that's
you just ride it all
awesome.
over. Yeah. And then I got
Yeah.
the camper van.
Camper van, does that have the LS motor in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that
Yeah.
that's turboed, right? I can't remember if those are turboed.
No, that's not. It's
That's
just
not.
that's actually it's like a 4.8, I think. Ah.
Yeah. It's a
But
pretty
yeah,
sought after van you've got there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's got a TV in there, a bed, cedar plank, running water, little Yeti
Yeah.
cooler under the bed, the whole nine. I've been driving that thing all over. I love that van.
Yeah. This is mine. Uh it's not letting
Oh,
me zoom in.
Yeah,
But that tiny little car with the little roof box right there, that's
man,
mine.
that thing would
Um,
be a sick adventure mobile right there.
oh, it's so much fun. You know, it's
Yeah,
like especially for the Midwest between the snow and the mud and everything, it's good to know that I won't get stuck. It sits low to
yeah.
the ground, but you know,
That's a
low car.
3.2. Yeah.
No, I've got the 1.8, so tiny little
Oh, it's the
engine, tiny
yeah,
little
turbo
turbocharged
one and
engine.
yep, yep. I've had one
Yeah.
of those too.
But they're fun. They are a bit of a pain to work on. But they're definitely a lot of fun. I had to pick up a hobby. And so my fiance and I joke about it because like, you know, I'm fortunate to be doing what I really love to do for work. You know, artwork and painting murals and traveling is like 100% my favorite thing to do. But for it to continue being my favorite thing to do, I had to pick up another hobby that, you know, like I'm getting older and I can't skateboard anymore. And so, or not how I used to. And so I needed something that like could give me a little bit of adrenaline and also like kind of just hold my mind a little bit, keep it steady. And so, you know, I picked up working on cars a few years ago, and it's been like, I can't say it's been all downhill because it's actually been really awesome. But it's been expensive.
Yeah,
It, it's a good hobby. It saves money, but when you realize you can do most of the things yourself, and you're like, oh, I can fix that. I can do that.
yeah. And then all of a sudden it becomes like harrowing, and you're like, I'm not having fun
Yeah,
anymore. This sucks, and I do not want to keep
yeah.
doing this. I've been there.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to work on my emission system anymore. I think that was one where I was like, nah.
Nah, yeah, no kidding, man. Well, I have had you on here for right about an hour. I don't want to hold you up too long, but it was an absolute
Okay.
pleasure to have you on here, man. And whenever
No,
you've got my
thank
number,
you.
yeah, you've got my number. So if you
Perfect.
or when you come back to Attica, you'll have to hit me up because I will
Yeah.
put you in that razor and I will take you for the ride of your life.
Sweet. That sounds fantastic. I would love to go off-roading. I'm like really, really looking forward to it. And depending on how the roads are, I'm wondering if I can actually bring my own car on there. By the time I get out, I might have a new clutch. So it might be in a good position to to do some pulls.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so I've got clutch and wheel bearings, just ordered wheel bearings. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, let's definitely link up. And I think, you know, one thing that could be really cool is if we get other artists working on this, maybe we can have like a cool like group session or something and jump on here again with you and talk a little bit more about what we're doing. And yeah, so I would say thanks again to Attica. Like Attica's been incredible, and it's kind of blown my mind how cool people can be. So
That's awesome, man. That's awesome to hear. And absolutely, if you want to bring more people on here, I would, I'd love to. And when you come back to Attica, if you want to come sit in the actual podcast studio, we'll do another podcast then and make it legit. And you can talk about anything you
perfect.
want. Yeah, yeah, whatever you need, man.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Very cool. Well, cheers and thank you for having me.
absolutely, man. Thank you so much. You did a terrific job on that mural, and I cannot wait to see what the future brings for you.
Awesome.
I'll see you
Thank you.
later.
You have a good one.
You too, buddy.